नमस्कार दोस्तों, स्वागत है आप सभी का आपके अपने YouTube चैनल में मज़ेदार रीडिंग में और मेरे नए वीडियो में, जो कि आज हम लोग करने आ रहे हैं ऑन क्लास टेंथ ऑन चैप्टर नंबर 10th, दैट इज़ 18th सेंचुरी पॉलिटिकल फॉर्मेशंस ऑफ क्लास 7th हिस्ट्री। सो आपको एक बात बता दूं कि मैं आपको ये चैप्टर समझाता नहीं हूँ और ना ही आपको इसके नोट्स लिखवाता हूँ। मैं केवल आपके लिए रीडिंग करता हूँ, क्योंकि रीडिंग सबसे बेसिक चीज़ है जो कि हर बच्चे को करनी चाहिए। लेकिन आज मैं देख रहा हूँ कि वो ज़माना चला गया जब बच्चे रीडिंग करते थे। आजकल के बच्चे रीडिंग करते ही नहीं है, तो कम से कम सुन ही लिया करो यार। करते हो तो बहुत बढ़िया बात है। कुछ बच्चे ज़रूर हैं जो कि रीडिंग करते हैं। अब अगर करते हो तो बहुत बढ़िया बात है, और अगर नहीं करते हो दोस्तों तो कम से कम सुन ही लिया करो एनसीईआरटी की रीडिंग। मैं एनसीईआरटी की रीडिंग की बात कर रहा हूँ, बाकी सारे नॉवेल्स वगैरह तो बहुत जन पढ़ते हैं, और स्टोरी बुक्स वगैरह पढ़ना किसको अच्छा नहीं लगता। तो कॉमिक्स, स्टोरी बुक्स, ये सब की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ, मैं एनसीईआरटी की बात कर रहा हूँ। तो मैंने तो बहुत बच्चे ऐसे देखे हैं जो कि बड़े बड़े नॉवेल्स पढ़ जाते हैं, लेकिन एनसीईआरटी उनसे पढ़ी नहीं आती। तो आपको ये समझना है दोस्तों, ठीक है। तो आपके लिए एनसीईआरटी की रीडिंग हाजिर है, शुरू करते हैं, चलिए। If you look at maps 1 and 2 closely, you will see something significant happening in the subcontinent during the first half of the 18th century. Notice how the boundaries of the Mughal Empire were reshaped by the emergence of a number of independent kingdoms by 1765. Number of emerging kingdoms. By 1765, notice how another power, the British, had successfully grabbed major chunks of the territory in eastern India. What these maps tell us is that political conditions in 18th century India changed quite dramatically and within a relatively short span of time. In this chapter, we will read about the emergence of new political groups in the subcontinent during the first half of the 18th century, roughly from 1707 when Aurangzeb died till the Third Battle of Panipat in 1761. ये देखिए दोस्तों, ये वाला लाइन क्या दिखाता है? एक्सटर्नल बाउंड्री ऑफ द मुगल एम्पायर 1700। ये वाला बाउंड्री दोस्तों देख सकते हैं आप लोग, कहाँ से कहाँ तक कनेक्टेड है। और ये टेरिटरी अंडर ब्रिटिश कंट्रोल मिड 18th सेंचुरी। ये देखिए ऑरेंज वाला जो टेरिटरी है ये ब्रिटिश कंट्रोल के अंदर था, ठीक है दोस्तों। चलिए, मैप टू ब्रिटिश टेरिटरीज इन द मिड 18th सेंचुरीज, ये सब दिखा रखा है इसमें, ये वाले मैप में। द क्राइसिस ऑफ द एम्पायर एंड the later Mughals. In chapter 4, you saw how the Mughal Empire reached the height of its success and started facing a variety of crises towards the closing years of the 17th century. These were caused by a number of factors. Emperor Aurangzeb had depleted the military and financial resources of his empire by fighting a long war in the Deccan. Under his successors, the efficiency of the imperial administration broke down. It became increasingly difficult for the later Mughal emperors to keep a check on their powerful mansabdars. See chapter 4, table 1, which group of people challenged Mughal authority for the longest time in Aurangzeb's reign. तो ये आपको दोस्तों खोजने के लिए बोला गया, खोजिए। Nobles appointed as governors, subedars, often controlled the offices of revenue and military administration, diwani and faujdari as well. This gave them extraordinary political, economic, and military powers over vast regions of the Mughal Empire. As the governors consolidated their rule over the provinces, the periodic remission of revenue to the capital declined. Peasant and zamindari rebellions in many parts of the northern and western India added to these problems. These revolts were sometimes caused by the pressures of mounting taxes. At other times, attempts at other times they were attempts by political sorry at other times they were attempts by powerful chieftains to consolidate their own positions. Mughal authority had been challenged by rebellious groups in the past as well, but these groups were now able to seize the economic resources of the region to consolidate their positions. The Mughal emperors after Aurangzeb were unable to arrest the gradual shifting of the political and economic authority into the hands of provincial governors, local chieftains, and other groups. Rich harvests and empty coffers. The following is a contemporary writer's account of the financial bankruptcy of the empire. The great lords are helpless and impoverished. Their peasants raise 2 crops a year, but their lords see nothing of either, and their agents on the spot are virtual prisoners in the peasants' hands. Like a peasant kept in his creditor's house, until he can pay his debt. So, until he can pay his debt. So, complete is the collapse of all order and administration. That though the peasant reaps, though the peasant reaps a harvest of gold, his lord does not see so much as a wisp of straw. How then the Lord keep the armed force he should? How can he pray? How can he pay the soldiers who should go before him when he goes out, or the horsemen who should ride behind him? In the midst of this economic and political crisis, the ruler of Iran, Nadir Shah, sacked and plundered the city of Delhi in 1739 and took away immense amounts of wealth. This invasion was followed by a series of plundering raids by Afghan ruler Ahmad Shah Abdali, who invaded North India 5 times between 1748 and 1761. Nadir Shah attacks Delhi. The devastation of Delhi after Nadir Shah's invasion was described by contemporary observers. On One described the wealth looted from the Mughal treasury as follows: 60 lakhs of rupees and some thousand gold coins, nearly 1 crore worth of gold ware, nearly 50 crores worth of jewels, most of them unrivaled in the world, and the above included the Peacock Throne. Another account described the invasion's impact upon Delhi. Those who had been masters were now in dire straits, and those who had been revered couldn't even get water to quench their thirst. The recluses were pulled out of their corners. The wealthy were turned into beggars. Those who once set the style in clothes now went naked, and those who owned property were now homeless. The new city, Shahjahanabad, was turned into rubble. Nadir Shah then attacked the old quarters of the city and destroyed a whole world that existed there. A 1779 portrait of Nadir Shah. 1779 portrait of Nadir Shah. ये तो देखिए दोस्तों. Already under severe pressure from all sides, the empire was further weakened by competition amongst different groups of nobles. They were divided into two major groups or factions, that the Iranis and Turanis, nobles of descent. For a long time, the later Mughal emperors were puppets in the hands of either of one of were For a long time, the later Mughal emperors were puppets in the hands of either one or the other of these two political groups. The worst possible humiliation came when two Mughal emperors, Farrukh Siyar 1713 to 1719 and Alamgir II 1754 to 1759, were assassinated, and two others, Ahmad Shah 1748 to 1754 and Shah Alam II 1759 to 1816, were blinded by their nobles. Emergence of new states. With the decline in the authority of the Mughal emperors, the governors of large provinces, Subadars, and the great zamindars consolidated their authority in different parts of the subcontinent. Through the 18th century, the Mughal Empire gradually fragmented into a number of independent regional states. Broadly speaking, the states of the 18th century can be divided into three overlapping groups: states that were old Mughal provinces like Awadh, Bengal, and Hyderabad. Although extremely powerful and quite independent, the rulers of these states did not break their formal ties with the Mughal emperor. Number two, states that had enjoyed considerable independence under the Mughals as Watan Jagirs. These included several Rajput principalities. The last group included states under the control of Marathas, Sikhs, and others like the Jats. These were of differing sizes and had seized their independence from Mughals after a long drawn armed struggle. Farrukh Siyar receiving a noble in court. ये वाला देखिए दोस्तों. The old Mughal provinces. Amongst the states that were carved out of the old Mughal provinces in the 18th century, three stand out very prominently. These were Awadh, Bengal, and Hyderabad. All three states were founded by members of the high Mughal nobility who had been governors of large provinces: Saadat Khan, Awadh; Murshid Quli Khan, Bengal; and Asaf Jah, Hyderabad. All three had occupied high mansabdari positions and enjoyed the trust and confidence of the emperors. Both Asaf Jah and Murshid Quli Khan held both Asaf Jah and Murshid Quli Khan held a Zat rank of 7,000 each, while Sadat Khan was 6,000. While Sadat Khan's Zat was 6,000. Hyderabad. Nizam ul Mulk Asaf Jah, the founder of Hyderabad state 1724 to 1748, was one of the most powerful members at the court of the Mughal Emperor Farooq Siyar. He was entrusted first with the governorship of Awadh and later given charge of the Deccan. As the Mughal governor of the Deccan provinces during 1720 to 22, Asaf Jah had already gained control over its political and financial administration, taking subsequent advantage of turmoil in the Deccan and the competition amongst the court nobility. He gathered power in his hands and became the actual ruler of that region. Asaf Jah fought. Asaf Jah brought skilled soldiers and administrators from northern India who welcomed the new opportunities in the south. He appointed mansabdars and granted Jagirs. Although he was still a servant of the Mughal emperor, he ruled quite independently without seeking any direction from Delhi or facing any interference. The Mughal emperor merely confirmed the decisions already taken by the Nizam ul Mulk Asaf Jah. The state of Hyderabad was constantly engaged in a struggle against the Marathas to the west with independent Telugu warrior chiefs Nayakas of the plateau. The ambitions of the Nizam ul Mulk Asaf Jah to control the rich textile producing areas of the Coromandel coast in the east were checked by the British, who were becoming increasingly powerful in that region. Map 2 में आप देख सकते हैं इसको दोस्तों. The Nizam's army, a description of the Nizam of Hyderabad's personal troopers in 1790. The Nizam has a sawari of 400 elephants, several thousand of horsemen near his person, who receive upwards 100 rupees nominal pay and are extremely well mounted and richly caparisoned. तो ये है दोस्तों डिस्क्रिप्शन था किसका, निज़ाम्स आर्मी का. ठीक है, द निज़ाम्स आर्मी का. अवध. Burhan ul Mulk Sadat Khan was appointed Subadar of Awadh in 1722 and founded a state which was one of the most important to emerge out of the breakup of the Mughal Empire. Awadh was a prosperous region controlling the rich alluvial Ganga plain and the main trade route between North India and Bengal. Burhan ul Mulk also held the combined offices of Subedari, Diwani and Faujdari. In other words, he was responsible for managing the political, financial and military affairs of the province of Awadh. In trying to consolidate their rule, why did Mughal Subedars also want to control the office of Diwan? तो ये देखिए दोस्तों, आप लोग देख सकते हैं बुरहान उल मुल्क सादत खान का पिक्चर दे रखा है दोस्तों, ये वाला. Burhan ul Mulk tried to decrease Mughal influence in the Awadh region by reducing the number of office holders, Jagirdars, appointed by the Mughals. He also reduced the size of Jagirs and appointed his own loyal servants to vacant positions. The accounts of Jagirdars were checked to prevent cheating, and the revenues of all districts were reassessed by officials appointed by the Nawab's court. He seized a number of Rajput zamindaris and the agriculturally fertile lands of the Afghans of Rohilkhand. The state depended on the local bankers and Mahajans for loans. It sold the right to collect tax to the highest bidders. These revenue farmers, Ijaradars, agreed to pay the state a fixed sum of money. Local bankers guaranteed the payment of this contracted amount to the state. In turn, the revenue farmers were given considerable freedom in the assessment and collection of taxes. These developments allowed new social groups like moneylenders and bankers to influence the management of the state's revenue system, something which had not occurred in the past. Bengal gradually broke away from Mughal control under Murshid Quli Khan, who was appointed as the Naib, deputy to the governor of the province. Although never a formal Subedar, Murshid Quli Khan very quickly seized all the power that went with that office. Like the rulers of Hyderabad and Awadh, he also commanded the revenue administration of the state. In an effort to reduce Mughal influence in Bengal, he transferred all Mughal Jagirdars to Odisha and Bengal and ordered a major reassessment of the revenues of Bengal. Revenue was collected in cash with great strictness from all zamindars. As a result, many zamindars had to borrow money from bankers and money lenders. Those unable to pay were forced to sell their lands to larger zamindars. The formation of a regional state in 18th century Bengal therefore led to a considerable change amongst the zamindars. The close connection between the state and bankers. अलीवर्दी खान होल्डिंग कोर्ट, ये देखिए दोस्तों ये वाला. The close connection between the state and bankers noticeable in Hyderabad and Awadh as well was evident in Bengal under the rule of Alivardi Khan from 1740 to 1756. During his reign, the banking house of Jagat Seth became extremely prosperous. If we take a bird's eye view, we can detect three common features amongst these states. First, though many of the larger states were established by erstwhile Mughal nobles, they were highly suspicious of some of the administrative systems that they had inherited, in particular the Jagirdari system. Second, their method of tax collection differed. Rather than relying upon the officers of the state, all three regimes contracted with revenue farmers for the collection of revenue. The practice of ijaradari, thoroughly disapproved of by the Mughals, spread all over India in the 18th century. Their impact on the countryside differed considerably. The third common feature in all these regional states was their emerging relationship with rich bankers and merchants. These people lent money to revenue farmers, received land as security, and collected taxes from these lands though their through their own agents. Throughout India, the richest merchants and bankers were gaining a stake in the new political order. Many Rajput rulers had accepted the suzerainty. I think I am pronouncing it right. Suzerainty. Suzerainty. Huh. Many Rajput rulers accepted the suzerainty of the Mughals, but Mewar was the only Rajput state which defied Mughal authority. Rana Pratap ascended the throne at Mewar in 1572 with Udaipur and large part of Mewar under his control. A series of envoys were sent to the Rana to persuade him to accept Mughal suzerainty, but he stood his ground. The Watan Jagirs of the Rajputs. Many Rajput kings, particularly those belonging to Amber and Jodhpur, had served under the Mughals with distinction. In exchange, they were permitted to enjoy considerable autonomy in their Watan Jagirs. In the 18th century, these rulers now attempted to extend their control over adjacent regions. Ajit Singh, the ruler of Jodhpur, was also involved in the factional politics at the Mughal court. These influential Rajput families claimed the subedari of the rich provinces of Gujarat and Malwa. Raja Ajit Singh of Jodhpur held the governorship of Gujarat, and Savai Raja Jai Singh of Amber was governor of Malwa. These offices were renewed by Emperor Jahandar Shah in 1713. They also tried to extend their territories by seizing portions of imperial territories neighboring their watans. Nagpur was conquered and annexed to the House of Jodhpur, while Amber seized large portions of Bundi. Savai Raja Jai Singh founded his new capital at Jaipur and was given the Subedari of Agra in 1722. Maratha campaigns into Rajasthan from the 1740s put severe pressure on these principalities and checked their further expansion. Many Rajput chieftains built a number of forts which on hilltops built a number of many Rajput chieftains built a number of forts on hilltops which became centers of power with extensive fortifications. These majestic structures housed urban centers, palaces, temples, trading centers, water harvesting structures, and other buildings. The Chittorgarh fort attained many water bodies, varying from talabs, ponds to kundis, wells, Baulis, stepwells, etc. Raja Jai Singh of Jaipur. A description of Raja Jai Singh in a Persian account of 1732. Raja Jai Singh was at the height of his power. He was the governor of Agra for 12 years and Malwa for 5 or 6 years. He possessed a large army, artillery, and great wealth. He sway extended his sway extended from Delhi to the banks of Narmada. जंतर मंतर इन जयपुर ये है दोस्तों. समय राजा Jai Singh, the ruler of Amber, constructed the 5 astronomical observatories, one each in Delhi, Jaipur, and Ujjain, Mathura, and Varanasi. Commonly known as Jantar Mantar, these observatories had various instruments to study heavenly bodies. Mehergarh Fort, Jodhpur, ये रहा दोस्तों. Seizing independence. The organization of the Sikhs into a political community during the 17th century helped in regional state building in the Punjab. Several battles, ये आप लोगों ने chapter 8 में पढ़ा होगा. Several battles were fought by Guru Gobind Singh against the Rajput and Mughal rulers, both before and after the institution of the Khalsa in 1699. After his death in 1708, the Khalsa rose in revolt against the Mughal authority under Banda Bahadur's leadership, declared their sovereign rule by striking coins in the name of Guru Nanak and Guru Gobind Singh, and established their own administration between the Satluj and the Jamuna. Banda Bahadur was captured in 1715 and executed in 1716. What is the Khalsa? Do you recall reading about it in chapter 8? तो ये दोस्तों आप लोग को याद होगा. तो ये दोस्तों क्या है? Sword of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. ये under a number of able leaders in the 18th century, the Sikhs organized themselves into a number of bands called jathas and later on missals. Their combined forces were known as the Grand Army, Dal Khalsa. The entire body used to meet at Amritsar at the time of Baisakhi and Diwali to take collective decisions known as resolutions of the Gurmatas. A system called Rakhi was introduced, offering protection to cultivators on payment of a tax of 20% of the produce. Portrait of Shivaji. Towards the end of the 17th century, a powerful state started emerging in the Deccan under the leadership of Shivaji, which finally led to the establishment of the Maratha state. Shivaji was born to Shahji and Jijabai at Shivneri in 1630. Under the guidance of his mother and his guardian, Dada Kondev, Shivaji embarked on a career of conquest at a young age. The occupation of Javli made him the undisputed leader of the Malwa highlands, which paved the way for further expansion. His exploits against the forces of Bijapur and the Mughals and made him a legendary figure. He often restored to guerrilla warfare against his opponents by introducing an efficient administrative system supported by a revenue collection method based on Chauth and Sardesh Mukhi. He laid the foundations of a strong Maratha state. ये है दोस्तों शिवाजी का वो, इसके बारे में हम लोग भी पढ़ेंगे थोड़ी देर में. Guru Gobind Singh had inspired the Khalsa with the belief that their destiny was to rule. Raj Karega Khalsa. Their well-knit organization enabled them to put up a successful resistance to the Mughal governors first, and then to Ahmad Shah Abdali, who had seized the rich province of the Punjab and the Sarkar of Sirhind from the Mughals. The Khalsa declared their sovereign rule by striking their own coin again in 1765. Significantly, this coin bore the same inscription as the one on the orders issued by the Khalsa in the time of Banda Bahadur. The Sikh territories in the late 18th century extended from the Indus to the Jamuna, but they were divided under different rulers. One of them, Maharaja Ranjit Singh, reunited these groups and established his capital at Lahore in 1799. The Marathas. The Maratha kingdom was another powerful regional kingdom to arise out of a sustained opposition to Mughal rule. Shivaji 1627 to 1680 carved out a stable kingdom with the support of powerful warrior families, Deshmukhs. Group of highly mobile peasant pastoralists, Kunbis, provided the backbone of the Maratha army. Shivaji used these forces to challenge the Mughals in the peninsula. After Shivaji's death, effective power in the Maratha state was wielded by a family of Chitpavan Brahmanas who served Shivaji's successors as Peshwa or principal minister. Pune became the capital of the Maratha kingdom. Under the Peshwas, the Marathas developed a very successful military organization. Their success lay in bypassing the fortified areas of the Mughals by raiding cities and by engaging Mughal armies in areas where their supply lines and reinforcements could be easily disturbed. Between 1720 and 1761, the Maratha Empire expanded. It gradually chipped away the authority of the Mughal Empire. Malwa and Gujarat were seized from the Mughals by the 1720s. By the 1730s, by the 1730s, Maratha king was recognized. The Maratha king was recognized as the overlord of the entire Deccan Peninsula. He possessed the right to levy Chauth and Sardeshmukhi in the entire region. Bajirao I, also known as Bajirao Ballal, was the son of Peshwa Balaji Vishwanath. He was a great Maratha general who is credited to have expanded the Maratha kingdom beyond the Vindhyas and is known for his military campaigns against Malwa, Bundelkhand, Gujarat, and Portuguese. After raiding Delhi in 1737, the frontiers of Maratha domination expanded rapidly into Rajasthan and Punjab in the north, into Bengal and Odisha in the east, into Karnataka and the Tamil and Telugu countries in the south. These were not formally included in the Maratha Empire but were made to pay tribute as a way of accepting Maratha sovereignty. Expansion brought enormous resources, but it came at a price. These military campaigns also made other rulers hostile towards the Marathas. As a result, they were not inclined to support the Marathas during the Third Battle of Panipat in 1761. Alongside endless military campaigns, the Marathas developed an effective administrative system as well. Administrative The Marathas developed an effective administrative system as well. Once conquest had been completed and Maratha rule was secure, revenue demands were gradually introduced, taking local conditions into account. Agriculture was encouraged and trade revived. This allowed Maratha chiefs, Sardars like the Sindhia of Gwalior, Gaikwad of Baroda, and Bhosle of Nagpur, the resources to raise powerful armies. Maratha campaigns into Malwa in the 1720s did not challenge the growth and prosperity of the cities in the region. Ujjain expanded under Scindia's patronage and Indore under Holkar's. By all accounts, these cities were large and prosperous and functioned as important commercial and cultural centers. New trade routes emerged within the areas controlled by the Marathas. The silk produced in the Chanderi region now found a new outlet in Pune, the Maratha capital. Burhanpur, which had earlier participated in the trade between Agra and Surat, now expanded its hinterland to include Pune and Nagpur in the south and Lucknow and Allahabad in the east. Chauth, 25% of the revenue 25% of the land revenue claimed by zamindars. In the Deccan, this was collected by the Marathas. Sardeshmukhi, 9 to 10% of the land revenue paid to the head revenue collector in the Deccan. The Jats. Like the other states, the Jats consolidated their power during the late 17th and 18th centuries. Under their leader Churaman, they acquired control over territories situated to the west of the city of Delhi, and by the 1670s, and by the 1680s, they had begun dominating the region between the two imperial cities of Delhi and Agra. For a while, they became the virtual custodians of the city of Agra. The Jats were prosperous agriculturalists, and towns like Panipat and Ballabgarh became important trading centers in the areas dominated by them. Under Surajmal, the kingdom of Bharatpur emerged as a strong state. When Nadir Shah sacked Delhi in 1739, many of the city's notables took refuge there. His son Jawahir Shah had 30,000 troops of his own and hired another 20,000 Maratha and 15,000 Sikh troops to fight the Mughals. The power of the Jats reached its zenith under Surajmal, who consolidated the Jat state Bharatpur in present-day Rajasthan during 1756 to 1763. The areas under the political control of Surajmal broadly included parts of modern eastern Rajasthan, southern Haryana, western Uttar Pradesh, and Delhi. Surajmal built a number of forts and palaces, and the famous Lohagarh fort in Bharatpur is regarded as one of the strongest fort built in this region. 18th century palace complex at Dig. Note that the Bangla Dome on the assembly hall on the roof of the building. ये वाला दोस्तों. While the Bharatpur port was built in a fairly traditional style, at Dig, the Jats built an elaborate garden palace combining styles seen at Amber and Agra. Its buildings were modeled on architectural forms first associated with royalty under Shah Jahan. ये आप लोग देख सकते हैं फिगर 12 इन चैप्टर 5 में और फिगर 12 इन चैप्टर 9 में. Elsewhere, the French Revolution 1789 to 1794. In the various state systems of the 18th century India, the common people did not enjoy the right to participate in the affairs of their governments. In the Western world, this was the situation until the late 18th century. The American 1776 and 1781 and French revolutions challenged the social and political privileges enjoyed by the aristocrats. During the French Revolution, the middle class peasants and artisans fought against the special rights enjoyed by the clergy and the nobility. They believed that no group in society should have privileges based on birth. Rather, people's social position must depend on merit. The philosophers of the French Revolution suggested that there be equal laws and opportunities for all. They also held that the authority of the government should come from the people, who must possess the right to participate in its affairs. Movements such as the French and American revolutions gradually transformed subjects into citizens. The ideas of citizenship, nation state, and democratic rights took root in India from the late 19th century. इसके साथ दोस्तों चैप्टर का रीडिंग हमारा खत्म हो जाता है और इसके साथ हम लोग क्लास 7th की हिस्ट्री भी खत्म कर चुके हैं दोस्तों. आप लोगों को बहुत बहुत बधाई अंत तक बने रहने के लिए. अगर आप लोग इसी तरह बने रहेंगे तो दोस्तों आपको एनसीईआरटी आपके दिमाग में बस जाएगी. आप लोग पहली बार तो सुन रहे हैं तो नॉर्मल स्पीड में सुनिए, दूसरी बार जब सुनिए तो 1.5 की स्पीड में सुनिए, तीसरी बार 1.75 की, चौथी बार × 2 के स्पीड में भी सुन सकते हैं दोस्तों अगर आपका मन करे तो दोस्तों ऐसे आप लोग 3-4 बार 5-6 बार अगर एनसीईआरटी की रीडिंग सुन लेंगे ना तो आपके दिमाग में एनसीईआरटी बस जाएगी. सॉरी. तो दोस्तों आप लोगों को कुछ नहीं करना है, बस पढ़ते जाना है, सुनते जाना है और स्मार्ट वर्क करते जाना है. हार्ड वर्क गधे की तरह हार्ड वर्क नहीं करना है, स्मार्ट वर्क करना है. रीडिंग सुन लो, आपका रीडिंग हो जाएगा दोस्तों. और बस आँख रहनी चाहिए वीडियोज़ पे. दोस्तों अगर आपको मेरा एफर्ट पसंद आ रहा है, मैं आपको काम को आसान कर दे रहा हूँ रीडिंग के, तो आप लाइक शेयर और सब्सक्राइब जरूर करें. और मिलते हैं नेक्स्ट वीडियो में. तब तक के लिए मेरे बेस्ट विशेस हमेशा आपके साथ रहें और थैंक यू एंड हैव अ नाइस डे.